Welcome to rSlash Am I the Butthole, where two parents abandoned their newborn twin boys in a foreign country. Am I the butthole for laughing in my biological parents' face when they told us that leaving us was the hardest decision they've made? Our family has an interesting story. My mother's side of the family and my father's side of the family have two marriages between the families. One of those marriages is my biological parents'. The other is my biological mom's brother and my biological dad's sister. Okay, this is kind of complicated, so just for clarity, we have a brother-sister pair and then a second brother-sister pair, and the two brother-sister pairs married each other. My mom, Linda, and my dad, Chris, actually met at my uncle's and aunt's engagement dinner when both of them were 16. My parents are still complete wrecks. My dad has always been the troubled one in the family, who would have problems with school or work, and my mom has had addiction issues since she was 14. When they met and started to have a relationship, both sides of the family tried to break them up. They even sent them to different countries. However, they stole $50,000 from their families and managed to come together and then ran away when they were 19. They got married in a third world country, and when they were 21 years old, they had me, a 25-year-old boy, and my twin brother. They thought that we were dead weights, so they left us in the hospital and went to another country. Luckily, they checked into the hospital with their passports, so the hospital reached out to the embassy. Then, the embassy found my grandparents, and they brought us back home, and we've been raised by our uncle and aunt ever since. Me and my twin brother call my aunt and my uncle mom and dad. My parents were charged with child abandonment, but after 10 years of being MIA, the charges were dropped and our families also didn't try to look for them. 2 years ago, my biological parents just randomly showed up. Turns out they finished their education, have stable jobs in the country, started to get mental health treatments, and they've been sober for 9 years and have basically pulled themselves together. For the first 6 months after that, my biological parents only met their parents in public places, but after that, they were allowed into our houses. A year later, when me and my twin brother were 24, our biological parents were finally allowed to meet us. Me and my twin brothers started to have a relationship with them, and we're somewhat cordial right now. Last week, the topic of our abandonment came up, and our biological mother, Linda, told us that it was the hardest choice they've ever made. I started to laugh uncontrollably after that, and when they asked, I told them they had multiple chances to come back, but they didn't. And our families were right not to trust them, and we would always have our eyes watching them, and they should just accept that at this stage. Linda started to cry, and they left after that. All of my family, except for my brother, think that I'm being too cruel and I should apologize, but I think they need to hear the unfiltered truth. Am I the butthole? Yo, I like how they say, leaving you was the hardest thing that we ever did. Never mind that they were literally... What about the hardest thing that OP ever did? Being abandoned as babies in a hospital in another country with no tethers to their original family? If it weren't for dumb luck that the hospital had the passports and the hospital following up with the embassy, then I guess they would have grown up in an orphanage in some random third world country. The parents would have never been able to even find them because they would have just probably grown up on the streets or get adopted to some random family, and how could they ever find them again? OP and his brother aren't living a decent life because of their parents. They're living a decent life in spite of their parents. Oh my God, these two little babies, these two little twin boys were on the precipice of disaster. They were so close to having their lives literally ruined. Imagine two little babies crawling around at the edge of a cliff. If they crawl to the left, they fall to their doom. If they crawl to the right, they live on. That's a pretty accurate description of what these parents did. Man, and then they get upset at you and cry and say that you're being so cruel. Guys, this is why I don't like to give out 5 out of 5 butthole scores. I have to save them for scum, absolute subhuman scum like these people. They didn't leave their babies with their family. They didn't even take the time to send their family an email, not even a phone call saying, hey, by the way, we just gave birth to 2 little boys. We're not going to take care of them. It'd be great if you do, but we don't really care because we're irresponsible douchebags. So if you want to pick them up, they're in such and such hospital in Thailand or whatever. See ya. Peace out. Man. Not only are your parents the butthole in this story, but in my opinion, they literally deserve to be in jail. OP, you get 0 out of 5 buttholes. I'm giving your parents 5 out of 5 buttholes. Easiest 5 out of 5 butthole score in my life. If anyone in the comments disagree, I will fight you on it. Am I the butthole for leaving menstrual pads in a visible place in the bathroom? Me, my husband, and my husband's friend are currently on vacation, sharing a rented apartment with just one bathroom. Yesterday, I got my period and brought some pads. I left them on the bathroom counter in a semi-sheer bag where they weren't even visible. However, my husband thought this was inappropriate and could make his friend uncomfortable, knowing that someone in the apartment is bleeding. I argue that menstruation is a natural process and shouldn't be considered gross or dirty. Women shouldn't be ashamed or stigmatized because of it, as this has historically caused women to suffer. My husband didn't respond, but I'm still wondering if I was in the wrong for leaving the pads this way. OP, don't you know that when the time of your moon blood comes, you're supposed to retreat to the special woman hut where you won't corrupt other men with your unclean touch? I'm giving you... for leaving clean menstrual pads still in their packaging inside of another bag, I'm giving you 10 out of 5 buttholes. You literally deserve to be burned at the stake, you witch. Am I the butthole for giving my son non-vegan food behind my wife's back? I'm a 32-year-old man and my wife is 33. We've been married for 8 years and have a 12-year-old son together. About 6 years ago, my wife decided to go vegan. She was sent the documentary Dominion by a vegan friend of hers, and ever since has said that non-vegan food is revolting and refuses to eat it. After a long conversation, I agreed to go vegetarian and be vegan in the house and around her, which she was happy with. She also decided our son should be vegan, which after seeing a dietitian, I also agree with. We've all been fine with this arrangement, until a few months ago when I began finding wrappers from non-vegan candy and even hamburgers from McDonald's in my son's school bag, which he had been buying with chore money. I had a conversation with my son, and he confessed that he felt lonely and excluded eating vegan around his friends, and they always had much better candy than he did, and it wasn't fair. I decided that I didn't want him spending his pocket money on snacks and throwing out the vegan snacks that we actually brought him instead of buying games. It made no sense, but I also know the way my wife feels about non-vegan products. So I began buying my son what he wanted on our way to football practice instead. Long story short, my wife recently found out what's been going on and completely flipped out. She called me an animal abuse enabler and a few other names and said that I was corrupting our son. Now she's not speaking to me. Our son panicked and told her that I bought the snacks for him and he didn't know they weren't vegan. I don't blame him for that. He just doesn't want to be in trouble with mom. Am I the butthole here? OP, I am going to give you a very tiny butthole score of like 0.5 out of 5 buttholes because I believe parents should make parenting decisions together. So the correct thing to do would have been to talk to your wife about what your son was doing and come to an agreement as parents. Now, that doesn't mean that your wife doesn't deserve a butthole score because she's being completely overbearing. The dynamic that you're describing sounds less like a family and more like a dictatorship run by your vegan wife. Your son is 12. That's definitely old enough that he can start making his own choices. If he wants to eat meat at that age, then I think that's his decision. The correct response is to sit down with your son and have a conversation with him about what he really wants and the consequences of those decisions. Not going on some insane, angry guilt trip rant that your son isn't making the same moral choices that you are. So I'm giving your wife 2.5 out of 5 buttholes for being completely overbearing. Your son gets 0 out of 5 buttholes. He's just a normal 12-year-old. Am I the butthole for telling my husband that I won't be the one who tells our kids how he died? I'm a 27-year-old woman and my husband is 29. I've been married for 7 years, and I don't have any issues with respecting each other's boundaries. This past weekend, my husband completely disregarded me, and I can't get it out of my head, so I have to know if I was in the wrong. For some context, I was the sober driver for a group of friends and siblings, and we'd been out at a bar drinking. We all had a great time and went home. At this point, I was the only sober person by a long shot. My husband suggested that we go join the neighbors, which was a group of middle-aged women who were partying. We don't know them. I told him that it was rude to invite ourselves to someone else's house without their permission and to leave the idea alone. Not even 10 minutes later, our other brother, who's single, came in and told us that my husband was making him feel uncomfortable trying to get him and everyone else to go over there and join the neighbors. So I went back outside and told him to cut it out. I told him that he was making our brother and now me uncomfortable. During this time, I had been inside cooking food to help everyone sober up, and everyone else was outside on the deck. Once I finished, I was slightly annoyed but went outside to join everyone. The next thing I know, my husband and his friends stand up and start walking towards the dock. I asked them what they were doing, and he said they were hot, so they decided to go jump in the lake. It was pitch black out, and they had both taken over 7 shots in addition to I don't know how many drinks. I told him absolutely not. That is not safe. He rolled his eyes at me and turned to continue walking to the dock. At this point, I was pissed. I yelled out to him, "That's fine. I just won't be the one to tell our kids why their dad died." And then I went back inside to get ready for bed. He ignored me the rest of the night, and when I made him come in to have a conversation with me, he kept rolling his eyes. I told him I felt like he disrespected me, and he owed me an apology for crossing the line. He insisted that he did nothing wrong. I tried to have a conversation to explain why his actions were inappropriate, but he didn't see it and instead countered that they didn't even jump in. He said they just put their feet in. I ended up going to bed, and we haven't talked about it since. He thinks things are back to normal, but he knows that I'm being short with him. This was an adults-only weekend, and no kids were present at any point. So, am I the butthole for taking things too far with what I said? To be clear, OP, you didn't take things too far with what you said. You're right. What he was trying to do was extremely dangerous. Swimming when you're that drunk is just asking to drown. But on top of that, you said that he's swimming in a lake, not in like a swimming pool. So in my opinion, OP, the fact that he listened to you and didn't go swimming tells me that he knows that you're right, but his ego is bruised because, he didn't get what he wanted. Still, in my opinion, he owes you an apology. I'm giving you 0 out of 5 buttholes. I'm giving your husband 1.5 out of 5 buttholes. Also, I gotta say, your husband sounds like a sloppy drunk. Is it typical that he has these terrible ideas every time he gets drunk? Because if that's the case, maybe he should lay off the sauce. Am I the butthole for requiring that guests change clothes before they sit on my furniture? I'm a 20-year-old man and I live alone. I'm a very neat person. My mother kept our house pristine growing up, and I helped her for as long as I can remember. I recently moved into my own place, and something that I started thinking about was how many germs from outside we track into our houses. I always change out of my clothes as soon as I get home, but whenever I have guests, they don't. And I have no idea where they've been and what their clothes have been exposed to. About a month ago, I bought a bunch of those clear disposable raincoats, and I started telling people who I invited over that they could bring a change of fresh clothes to change into, or wear one of these coats before they sit on my furniture. I also offer to wash the clothes they change out of if they want to. My girlfriend doesn't have a problem with this and started just leaving clothes at my place. My mom and my little sister have also been okay with this new rule. But I invited a friend over yesterday, and when they got there, they were surprised that I actually enforced it and said, "You've got to be effing with me." I told them, "No, I'm serious," and then they left. They haven't been answering my messages either. I was talking to my mom about it today, and she said that it was pretty excessive and unreasonable to expect everyone to do that. I disagree, but I'm kinda second-guessing myself. Am I in the wrong here? I'm going to read this top post from Cultural Section because they're thinking exactly what I'm thinking. You're the butthole and you need therapy. I don't say that disparagingly at all. I sincerely think that you would benefit from professional help. Yeah, OP, you're not really being a jerk. You're just being kinda weird, and honestly, you might have OCD. So I'm going to give you a soft 0.5 out of 5 buttholes and say, please seek out a therapist, OP. Am I the butthole for going on vacation without my husband? I'm a 29-year-old woman. My husband, who's 32, planned a week vacation to New Orleans in the US. We, but mostly I, have been planning this for months. Back in March, I told him that I would do most of the planning, where to go, what to do, and all he has to do is make sure he had the week off and to buy the plane tickets. I spent the last few months researching what to do. I booked the hotel room, made reservations at places we wanted to try, and I made a list of all the sites I wanted to see. Every few weeks, I would check in with my husband to see if he had asked off work and bought the tickets yet. He would say that he was waiting for the plane ticket prices to go down. 3 weeks ago, I reminded him again, and he said that he got off work for the days, but he had forgotten to get the tickets. He looked online, and the tickets were close to $1,500 per ticket. He said that he was going to wait some more to see if they would go down. Last week, I asked if he had bought them yet, and he said no. We looked again, and the prices were still high. He said that he wasn't willing to spend that much money on them, and he asked how much money I would lose if I just canceled everything instead. He offered to have a nice staycation instead. I told him that I wasn't willing to cancel everything because I spent so much time planning it. We argued and we didn't come to a conclusion. I wound up buying just one ticket for myself, and when I flew out on Saturday, I told him I was still going, and he acted all surprised that I didn't want to stay home with him. I'm in New Orleans now, and he's blowing up my phone saying that I'm the butthole for still going without him. He was trying to get a ticket to come too, but I told him if he came, he's getting his own hotel room, because this is now my vacation away from him. Am I the butthole? OP, I genuinely can't tell from this story if your husband intentionally sabotaged the vacation or if he's actually that incompetent. In either case, he's still a huge butthole. I'm giving you 0 out of 5 buttholes. I'm giving your loser husband 2.5 out of 5 buttholes. That was rSlash Am I the Butthole, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.